Garnett is seen on video looking perfectly healthy, nothing wrong with him. But then Lacey is seen picking Garnett up, taking him to the bathroom, which is not on camera. And then when she returns with Garnett, Garnett is suddenly seriously ill. And it's just horrible to see. Like you can see it, like you can see how much pain Garnett is in. And I just don't understand how a parent, anybody, could put a child through that. He's just physically, you can see his body, he's in pain and he's trying to throw up, but of course he can't. The doctors rush in to help. They do some tests to try and figure out what the is going on, and they check Garnett's sodium levels, and his sodium levels are now 182. And the doctors are just like, this is impossible.
Sodium 182.
182?
182.
No, then you need to repeat it. Okay, that's impossible.
She was intentionally making her son sick to get attention and sympathy. And Lacey was absolutely loving all of the attention that she was getting from posting her son online. But then 2 days after, I know, only 2 days after the birth, Lacey rushed Garnett to the hospital saying that there was something wrong with him, saying that he had a fever and that there was something wrong with his ears. And the doctors at the hospital checked Garnett, they did all these tests and everything, but they couldn't find anything wrong with him. So then a couple of weeks pass and it's coming up to Christmas. It's coming up to Garnett's first Christmas. And again, Lacey is posting so many photos of him online in all of his little Christmas outfits with captions like, "My first Christmas, I'm on Santa's nice list." And again, Lacey is loving all of the attention that she's getting. But then the day after Christmas, Garnett is rushed into hospital because Lacey again is claiming that there is something wrong with him. The doctors run all of these tests. They hook up Garnett to an IV, and all Lacey seems to be bothered about is taking pictures and posting them on MySpace. This whole time, Lacey is documenting everything on MySpace with all of the photos of Garnett in hospital, in doctor's offices, just telling everybody how sick her son is and trying to get sympathy, trying to get attention. No matter how many tests they ran, they could never find any answers. All of these issues that Garnett was apparently having were a mystery to every single doctor. And because the doctors could never figure out what was wrong with Garnett, this is when suspicions started to arise about Lacey. And one of the doctors that Lacey saw did come up with her own theory. She thought that Lacey was suffering from Munchausen by proxy. But when the doctor approached Lacey about this, she absolutely lost it. She kept going round and moving to a different doctor. Every time a doctor started to get suspicious of her, she would leave and go to another one. I cannot believe it. But Lacey was able to find a doctor that agreed to operate on Garnett. How? He has no symptoms. How does any doctor agree to operate on a child who has no symptoms? So the doctor agreed to perform surgery on Garnett to try and stop him from vomiting. And this operation was carried out when Garnett was only a couple of months old. Why? And then at 9 months old, Lacey was able to convince another doctor to perform another operation. And this time the operation was to install a feeding tube into Garnett so it went directly into his stomach. And this is because Lacey continued to claim, I want to stress that, claim that Garnett refused to eat. And I cannot believe she was able to convince medical professionals that a 9-month-old needed a feeding tube when this little boy had no symptoms that he needed a feeding tube. And again, through both of the operations, Lacey is more concerned about taking pictures of Garnett in the hospital so she can post them on social media. And one of the captions that she posted with the photos said he had to get a feeding tube. And then in 2010, when Garnett was just 2 years old, Lacey did move to Florida, and it is believed that she moved to Florida because she had exhausted every single doctor in her area. And whilst in Florida, Lacey's behavior started to get even stranger, if that is possible. She started a blog documenting Garnett's journey and all of his illnesses, which you can still find today. Like, it's still online. It's so weird. And this next part that I'm going to talk about is incredibly weird and creeps me out. So Lacey joined a mom's group that used to meet on a regular basis, and she would tell all of the other moms in this group how she was desperate to have a second child. And she kept telling the other moms that she couldn't find a man to have a child with. And then one of the moms offered up her own husband to impregnate Lacey. I am done. It's like, really? What the actual... So this is what happened. Lacey started having sex with this woman's husband to try and get pregnant. But regardless, I think they only had sex a couple of times because the wife decided, yeah, this is not the best idea. Like, I've changed my mind. I don't really like this. And Lacey didn't get pregnant, thank God. And as time went on, more and more people were just becoming really suspicious of Lacey because she would just always lie. She would always change her story. They were becoming suspicious of Garnett's illnesses because he just wasn't ill. Like, no one really ever saw these symptoms that Lacey was talking about. And also, as Garnett was getting older and older, doctors kept saying that they wanted to remove his feeding tube. Remember that feeding tube in his stomach? Doctors were saying he doesn't need it. Like, we need to get that removed ASAP. But Lacey refused. She was like, no, he needs that feeding tube. And every time a doctor would approach her and say, we need to get that feeding tube out, she would just move to a different doctor. And then in January 2014, this is when the tragic events of today's case take place. And this is just 12 months after she moved to the fellowship community. So one day, Lacey calls up one of her friends. Her friend's name is Una Younger. And on the phone, Lacey is absolutely frantic. And she starts telling her friend, Garnett is having a seizure. I don't know what to do. I need to get him to hospital, but I don't have a car. Can you come over and help me get to the hospital? And Una is like, oh my God, of course, I'll be right over. Like, don't worry, I'll be there. So Una rushes over to Lacey's apartment in the commune. She goes to the door. Lacey opens the door, and Una is expecting Lacey to be frantic because that's what she was like on the phone. But that is not what Lacey is doing. Instead, Lacey is just very calmly, very slowly packing up a hospital bag. She has no sense of urgency. And Una is just like, hang on a minute. I thought that Garnett was having a seizure. I thought we needed to get to hospital ASAP. What are you doing? And Una also notices that Garnett has been hooked up to his feeding tube. And his feeding tube is hooked up to a bag of cloudy, white, milky liquid. And Una was like, well, that's strange because I thought that Garnett was on this organic whole foods kind of diet. So they all get in the car and they rush to the hospital. But all Lacey is concerned about is taking pictures of Garnett and posting them on social media. So when they arrive at the hospital, Garnett is obviously immediately checked over. The doctors can see that Garnett is shaking. There seems to be something wrong with him. They also notice that Garnett clearly wants to throw up, but he can't. Remember, he's had that operation that prevents him from throwing up. But apart from the shaking and the needing to vomit, nothing else seems to be wrong with Garnett. They also check his sodium levels, remember this, and his sodium levels are currently 140, which is normal. Remember that? Normal sodium levels when he arrives at the hospital. But Lacey keeps insisting that there's something wrong. She keeps insisting that Garnett is having seizures. So they do keep Garnett in the hospital for a few days just to make sure that everything is okay. And there was a camera in the room, I think just to record him, just to monitor his behavior and everything like that, his symptoms. And you can see on this recording that Garnett right now seems fine. He doesn't seem like there's anything particularly wrong with him. But Lacey, of course, is still posting to social media saying, pray for Garnett, he's in hospital, he's not doing well. And tragically, this is when things take a turn for the worse. Garnett is seen on video looking perfectly healthy, nothing wrong with him. But then Lacey is seen picking Garnett up, taking him to the bathroom, which is not on camera. And then when she returns with Garnett is suddenly seriously ill. And it's just horrible to see. You can see it. You can see how much pain Garnett is in. And I just don't understand how a parent, anybody could put a child through that. He's just physically, you can see his body, he's in pain and he's trying to throw up, but of course he can't. The doctors rush in to help. They do some tests to try and figure out what the is going on, and they check Garnett's sodium levels, and his sodium levels are now 182. And the doctors are just like, this is impossible.
Sodium 182.
182?
182.
No, then you need to repeat it. Okay, that's impossible.
Like, that is seriously high. This is extremely dangerous. Like, this is way too high. And you've got to remember that Garnett, when he went to hospital, his sodium levels were normal. They were 140. And the doctor said that Garnett's level at 182 is the highest level of sodium that he has ever seen in a person. Anything above 160 is extremely dangerous. So imagine what 182 is. The doctors realize right now that this could be fatal. Garnett is immediately airlifted to a specialized hospital that can deal with this, and they work frantically. They hook him up to IVs and everything to try and get his sodium levels down as safely and as quickly as possible. And throughout all of this, I just want to say that Lacey is very concerned with her social media. Of course, she's in the waiting room for a lot of this with her friend Una, the one that took them to the hospital. Una is just flabbergasted. She's just like, am I really witnessing a mother right now not really caring about her son, not really caring that her son could be dying right now? All she cares about is social media and posting how sad this whole situation is. So the doctors actually do make some progress, and they do get Garnett's sodium levels down slightly. But tragically, it was already too late. 182 is ridiculously high, and there had already been too much damage caused. And 24 hours later, Garnett was pronounced brain dead. The doctors had the horrible task of informing Lacey that her son was brain dead, and they were expecting her to completely fall apart, completely lose it. But that is not how she reacted. All Lacey was concerned about was going into the hospital room that Garnett was in and take pictures of him. And she took hundreds of pictures. And then almost straight away after taking these photos and leaving Garnett's hospital room, she posts on Facebook with the caption, "Garnett the Great journeyed onward today." Meanwhile, the doctors are trying to figure out how this happened, because one moment Garnett's sodium levels were completely normal, and then the next moment they were ridiculously high. And it's not possible for his sodium levels to have gotten that high on their own. So the doctors are left with one conclusion, and that is that this was intentional salt poisoning. And the doctors only have one suspect in their mind, and that is Lacey. So the doctors immediately inform the police on this. They also look into the medical history of Garnett. They also look into the medical history of Lacey and realize that some doctors did believe that she had Munchausen by proxy. The police search Lacey's apartment and they find 2 open containers of salt. They also hear a story from Lacey's friend Una about that strange milky white cloudy liquid in that bag that was attached to Garnett's feeding tube. Well, it turned out that Lacey had phoned her friend and asked her if she could go round to the apartment and get that bag of the cloudy white liquid, take it and get rid of it. And her friend, knowing what had happened, was just like, well, that's a bit shady. Why would I do that? So the friend, instead of doing what Lacey wanted, she actually handed that bag into the police. And the police tested the liquid, and guess what? The liquid was a high sodium mixture. The police also see the video footage from the hospital where Garnett looks completely fine and then goes to the bathroom with his mom and then returns and is not okay. The police also found out that whilst Lacey was in the hospital, she was Googling things that definitely make her look guilty, because Lacey was Googling high levels of sodium. What are the dangers of high levels of sodium? What is a high level of sodium for children? I mean, it doesn't take a genius, does it, to realize that Lacey poisoned her son. So when Lacey went to trial, of course, she pleaded not guilty. Her defense claimed that it was the hospital that poisoned her son, that it was the hospital that was negligent, and that Lacey had absolutely nothing to do with Garnett's high sodium levels. But given all of the evidence, the jury did not agree, and Lacey was found guilty of second-degree murder and also first-degree manslaughter and was sentenced to 20 years in prison.